Hello everyone, this is Miss Barkin. I'm sorry I can't be in school today. However, I still have to complete my jury duty service. So, just like yesterday, you need to log on to your Atmosphere, Notes, and Lab on Classroom. And once you get there, you want to double check to make sure that you have finished Activity 3. You will know you finished Activity 3 when you look and you see the entire table all the way up to 400 has been filled in. And also your questions are filled in with complete sentences. Remember, there was a small mistake in question 6, so please ignore that mistake. Thank you. When you are done with Activity 3, you are going to shoot right on down to Activity 4, Temperature and Altitude Graphing. So for Activity 4, what you are going to be doing is using kind of the information that we gathered in Activity 3, that information about how temperature is changing through the atmosphere, and we're now going to make it a visual image. And to do that, what we are going to do is we are going to make a line graph. And just to help you better understand what a line graph is a series of points connected together by a line. So we are going to be graphing how temperature changes and why in each layer of the atmosphere using data in Table 1. So that table can be found on the next page right here. So remember that data table 1 is found on a separate page. Now to do this, when you are done, on the bottom of that graph paper, there are going to be analysis questions. You should have gotten that graph paper from the sub, or you should have picked it up on your way in. It's up to the sub how they wanted to do that. So either they handed it to you individually and you put your name on the top, the date, the period, or you picked it up on your way in and you still put your name, date, and period on the top. When you are done graphing, remember you need to answer the analysis questions on the bottom. So to start with our graphing, we need to plot our data points in order to construct our line. So the first thing we are going to look for is our y-axis, and in this case, our y-axis is going to be the altitude. So to find that, we need to scroll down to Table 1, and we will look at our chart. And we see that on the top it says altitude. So I would start with my point of 0 right here. That would be the first thing I'm looking for. So we know our y-axis point is going to be 0. Now our x-axis point, we would go over from that spot and plot the point indicated for temperature. So temperature is going to be our x-axis. Now I plotted the first 3 points for you to be an example. So we're going to do the first 3 together. So 0, 15 is where we are going to start. So our altitude is 0, our temperature is 15. So if I go to my graph and I find 0, so the left, the y-axis, the vertical side is going to be altitude and it's labeled appropriately. Up at the top would be, up at the bottom is going to be the temperature. And so first my altitude was 0, so I'm going to find 0. Once I find 0, I have to remember, oh wait, what's my temperature? Oh, my temperature is 15, so I'm going to go 0. Then I would slide across until I look at the bottom and I find a temperature of 15. So here's 10. There's 15. There's already a data point right there for you. So now I would go back to my chart after I drew a spot in that location, and I would find an altitude of 5 and a temperature of -18. So first let's find our altitude of 5, which is right here. Then I'm going to slide over and find a temperature of -18. So I found -20, and remember with negatives, lower numbers are actually to the right. So if you look, my data point is slightly to the right of -20. It is okay if your data point is a little bit more in the center, as long as it's on the altitude 5 line, because remember this is an estimation. We don't exactly know where -18. We have to try our best to put it where -18 would be. So our next data point is going to be an altitude of 10 with a temperature of -49. So I'm going to find an altitude of 10. I'm going to slide over until I find -50, and I'm going to know that -49 is going to be a little bit to the right. So my data point is just a tiny bit to the right of -50. Now what I want you to do is I want you to try your best. Right now I'm going to give you a couple seconds. pause the video, and I want you to plot 12, negative 56. Don't forget to pause the video if you need to, but remember you're plotting 12, negative 56. Okay, let's see how you did. Did you put your data point slightly above the 10 to mark an altitude of 12? Did you slide over, find the negative 55 line, and since negative 56 is slightly higher, you put your data point slightly to the left? If you did, great job. You're right on task. Now, you are going to have to graph all of these different data points. You will have to graph all of these altitudes against these temperatures, and then all of these altitudes against these temperatures. So please make sure you are aware of that. You are not just graphing one side of this table, you are graphing both sides of the table. After you are done graphing all of these data points, you are going to connect all the data points or all the data plots together with a red colored pencil. I really don't care if it's red, use any color, I really don't care. As long as you are connecting these data points in order. So you're starting with the lowest altitude of 0 and gradually getting higher. I want you to try this as best you can. See, red's encouraging you. I really hope your line is a little bit straighter than my line, because I had to do this on the computer, which means I didn't have a ruler. You should be connecting all of your data points with a ruler. So again, I started with the lowest altitude, went to the next highest altitude, then continued this process. And remember, when you are done, you are actually going to have data points all the way up here that you would have to connect together using the same colored pencil throughout. It could be red, it could be any color that you want. Our next step is that you need to label each of the 4 primary layers of the atmosphere. So if we go back to the graph, what you'll notice is there are some lines hanging off of your graph. This is where I want you to label the layers, and I've already labeled the exosphere for you, so that should be a little bit of a guide as to where the other labels should go. Just so you are aware, these lines here are used to separate the different layers. So if you need a little assistance, where you can look is at the top of this document. Remember, we made this visual image. This image can help you, and also the digital lab from yesterday could help you with this process as well. Once you have finished labeling on those lines I showed you earlier, what we are going to do is a little bit of color coding. The first thing we are going to color code is our ozone layer. Our ozone layer is found at 20 kilometers to 35 kilometers, and you are going to lightly shade this yellow on your graph. You really want to make sure this is lightly shaded so that you can still see your data points. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to find 20 kilometers to 35 kilometers, and I am going to find my highlighter tool, change it to yellow as indicated, and shade in the ozone layer. Remember, you could do this with highlighter, colored pencil, marker, as long as you can still see your data points. Please shade neater than I am. Remember, I'm doing this on the computer. You are doing it on paper. Once you are done shading the ozone layer, we need to color code our temperature changes. So temperatures that are going to be decreasing, meaning moving towards the left, are going to be shaded blue. Temperatures that are increasing are going to be shaded red. And you should be shading pretty much for a whole layer at a time. Now, when you look at your graph, if I look at my graph that I have set up right now, I will notice my line is currently moving to the left. So is that decreasing or is that increasing? Think about what color you would shade it. Did you say that you would shade it blue? Good. If you did, that means you knew that this was decreasing. And we know it's decreasing because if I follow my line up through altitude, I would see that it is getting lower in number. Now remember, you are going to shade up to this dark line over here. So I would only shade this much. And again, please shade lightly so you can see your data points. I unfortunately don't have control over that here. Your last step is going to be to answer the analysis questions found on the bottom of your graph. If they are not found on the bottom of the graph, do not worry about it. But please make sure that you skip number 5. We are actually going to answer number 5 all together. So if number 5 is there, please skip it. If you finish all of this, which I don't expect us all to do, you can also move on to the analysis section found in activity 5. So please move on to the analysis section found in activity 5, where you're going to use a word bank to fill in the blanks, and then the last 2 questions, 8 and 9, are simple CRs with 1 claim, 1 piece of evidence, and 1 piece of reasoning. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm sorry my dog got in the way a little bit. Might have provided a little bit of entertainment, but try your best. We will have a discussion on Friday. Remember, you have homework due on Friday, your Ed puzzle, and you still need to finish your biome stations.